Coming up on this episode of the Spiro podcast.
What it comes down to is there's a certain point where you're going to hit a plateau. There's just so much, you only have so much time in a week or in a day or whatever the given situation. So really, you just have to kind of look at a cost analysis for not only financially, but your time, and say, if I were to bring on that next person onto the team, whether it's a salesperson like our business development specialist, or if it's a sales manager or director of sales and marketing, whatever the next step is for you, you just have to look at it from that perspective and determine what is it going to cost me and what are the benefits I'm going to get out of it, and use that to kind of drive your business. Because once you hit that plateau, that's really it.
Welcome to the Spiro podcast, managing your real estate photography and videography business, with your hosts, Todd Kivimaki and Craig Maxwell.
Hi, and welcome to the Spiro podcast, managing your real estate photography and videography business. Spiro is a software platform designed to help you not only really kind of manage and maintain your day-to-day real estate visual marketing company, but help it scale and grow as well. I'm your host, Craig Magrum. Always glad to be here with you. Each and every, I shouldn't say every. Most podcast episodes, you have our co-host and founder and owner of Spiro, Todd Kivimaki. However, Todd is out this week, but I have an awesome guest host with me this week that I'll introduce just in a bit. He's been on here before and always glad to talk with him. But before we dive into introducing him and this week's topic, which we're going to be talking about how to grow your client acquisition effort, how to grow that effort in gaining more clients, and two specific roles that you need in your company to help with that effort. So that's going to be the topic for this week. But before we get into that, let me give you a brief rundown on Spiro updates. Todd usually handles this, so you're going to have to forgive me for those of you watching here on YouTube. My eyes might shift over at my cheat sheet. But here's what we've got going on. If you didn't get the Spiro update newsletter that was sent out, or you just haven't had a chance to look at it, some great updates this week. First of all, rich previews on links that you share for your branded and non-branded property websites that Spiro builds for you. Previously, if you'd share a link, a lot of times you would just kind of have a bland link on your Facebook post or whatever. Well, now you have rich previews that show an eye-catching photo for your real estate agents to use in their social media posts. So rich previews on property website links now available through Spiro. Also, I can feel this one possibly very, very in real life here. Minimized new tabs. All right. So we've heard your feedback, lots of tabs that open up as you're doing different things in Spiro. Well, now, let's see, you can really minimize the number of those tabs that pop up. If you need to open a new tab, you just right click and use the shortcut, that control and click for a new tab. So minimize new tabs have now been rolled out. This is a very cool one. If you're using automatic scheduling and you find yourself short of availability for appointments, Spiro can now very gracefully fall back to manual scheduling so that you can try and squeeze in special requests if needed. Basically, you're overriding some of the rules that you have on your photographers, say daily mileage or distance between appointments. Spiro now can manually fall back to manual scheduling. So new feature there. Also, new admin entitlements. So if you're the super admin for your Spiro account, you can control which metrics and reports that you see on other admins' dashboards. So if there's certain information you don't want them to see, or you do want them to see, you can control that and manually make appear or disappear certain metrics and reports. So make sure you check that out. And then finally, just some basic user interface massages that we've made to make your experience a lot easier, especially on your order pages, easier way to build order pages. So check all of that out. Again, if you missed the email, make sure you dig that up, and we got a description on all of those new rollouts for Spiro. One other thing that we wanted to let you know about. So you've heard Todd mention this before. We, Wow Video Tours, our real estate photography and videography company, uses an editing team called Creo, which, for full disclosure, Todd has shared this in the past. He is part owner of. So we just want to let you know that up front. But Creo has expanded their team of editors and so have new capacity to take on new clients. So if you're looking for a superb editing team, I'd encourage you to check out Creo. You can check them out at their website. It's creollc.net. That's CREOLLC.net. We'll put a graphic if you're watching on YouTube. You can check out the graphic on screen, and we'll put the link in the show description as well. But check out Creo if you're looking for a new editing team. All right, that wraps up all the updates. Without further ado, let me introduce our guest host this week. He's been on the podcast before, but our Director of Sales and Marketing at Wow Video Tours, Steve Musser. Hey, welcome back to the podcast, Steve.
Hey, Craig. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it's always fun. I love talking client acquisition and sales with you and just learning from you. And I want to publicly, again, thank you for your leadership on the team at Wow Video Tours, especially serving us business development specialists. So thank you. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate it.
Am I making you blush, Steve?
Just a little bit.
All right. Well, as I mentioned, we want to talk about how to grow your effort of acquiring new clients, which we've talked about in the past. But I kind of wanted to dig in specifically about the role of, say, a director of marketing and sales and the role of a business development specialist and how that comes about, just all about. So let me kind of set this up for you, Stephen. We can start here. When I was running my own real estate visual marketing company, I was the director of sales and marketing as the owner. I was a two-person show. It was myself and one other photographer. So, I was doing the shooting, I was doing the appointment scheduling, I was, doing the sales meetings and the coffee meetings and the office presentations. I was doing the accounting on the weekends, which I despised with a passion. I was the chief bottle washer, you name it. That's a lot of us out here in this industry is small 1 and 2 person companies that we love the work we do, but we're kind of maxed out because we're doing it all. So here's the question. How does a smaller, we'll just start here, and it's a big question. How does a smaller operation like that get to the point of needing somebody like you, a director of sales and marketing or a business development specialist? How does a company even get to that point?
Yeah, it's a good question. So really it comes down to just a cost analysis, and not only for financial, but also your time. So as you said, when you're running your own business, you're doing everything. And in your situation, like, you can do that really well. And there's going to be some things that you enjoy doing and some things that you despise doing, like accounting. But what it comes down to is there's a certain point where you're going to hit a plateau. There's just so much, you only have so much time in a week or in a day or whatever the given situation. So really, you just have to kind of look at a cost analysis for not only financially, but your time, and say, if I were to bring on that next person onto the team, whether it's a salesperson like our business development specialist, or if it's a sales manager or director of sales and marketing, whatever the next step is for you, you just have to look at it from that perspective and determine, what is it going to cost me and what are the benefits I'm going to get out of it, and use that to kind of drive your business. Because once you hit that plateau, that's really it. You're kind of plateaued out as far as your business is going to have a hard time growing more than that, because you're just one person and your time's kind of maximized at that point. So when you're looking at that, that's really the deciding factor is, nobody wants to pay more money out, but at a certain point, if you can pay X amount and get 2X in return, then it's a no-brainer to take that next step up and build your business into the next level.
Yeah, I forget who it was. A mentor in my life somewhere in the past made the comment to me, because fiscally I'm pretty conservative. I don't like to spend a ton of money. And I was nervous to spend money even to start my business to begin with. But somebody said, Craig, you have to spend money to make money. I'm like, yeah, but that's so much money to spend up front. Say, take a drone, for example. So my first drone was a Phantom 4 drone that I got a package on Amazon, included 3 batteries. And I spent, at the time, I think it was $1,200 or $1,300. Well, for me, that was a lot of money. And I'm like, am I going to be able to get my money back? Within a very short amount of time, I made it back.
And in all reality, when you make that jump, whether it's an equipment upgrade or an addition to the team or anything like that, there might be a small amount of time to where you are making less money. And so, it's a scary step because you're
Right.
paying more out and you're not bringing more in maybe on day one. Maybe it's going to take 30, 60, 90 days, 365 days to start getting that return on that. So that's a tough decision, but that's really the measurement is, you want to make that step when you have a plan in place to know that I'm paying more, but in the end, I'm going to, increase my business by 5%, 10%, whatever the magic number is that makes it balance on the books.
Yeah. And it can be exponential growth if you hire the right role and the right person for that role. So you have to have faith that the investment is worth it, and you got to take risks sometimes.
Absolutely.
You usually need to take risks. we don't get into this industry not taking a risk, right?
Yeah. Anytime you're running your own business, there's a lot of risk. It's a risk to make that first step and open your own business, and then it's a risk every time you make another adjustment. So it's a scary step, but it's just one that you have to. You don't go into it blindly. You want to make a calculated, decision saying, I'm doing this because my plan is to get this in return. But it's a scary step and it's not going to pay day one. Typically, it's going to take a little bit to get to that next level.
Yeah. I've shared with viewers and listeners in the past, when I was on my own, I got to that point exactly that you talked about the plateau. Yeah. I had no more capacity. I had to make a decision. Am I going to stay a small boutique real estate photographer that only can do a certain number of jobs a year and only have a certain number of clients? Or am I going to grow the business, bring on additional staff? I shift my role more into, manager, business leader versus photographer. And one of our former teammates made that comment to me, Craig, you can't shoot forever. I'm like, are you saying I'm old? But it's a fair point. But my personal decision at the time was I'm going to stay the size I am because I enjoy the creative side too much. So I did stay small initially. Now, as it ends up, of course, C Imaging and Wow Video Tours, Wow kind of took things over for me. And I'm now able to concentrate on what I really enjoy doing, and that's the relationship building, the selling, and the shooting. And Wow as an organization, because it did have the vision for a larger reach to other realtors, is able to fill in all those other areas that I wasn't able to do. And I didn't necessarily want to be the manager and leader. I like working shoulder to shoulder with people rather than being the manager or the out front leader. So you got to find that, what's your motivation? What are your goals? And then make the decision, okay, do I want to acquire more clients and do I want to grow this company? And it may require me to do something different in my role as the owner. So let's assume that we do want to grow. You're not going the boutique photographer path. So we've mentioned 2 roles, Steve. Sales and marketing director and business development specialist or salesperson. So in your opinion, if an owner is at that point of realizing I need to acquire more clients, but there's other things I need to be working on and I can't be leading the sales effort primarily, or there might be somebody that can do it better than me, which role would you suggest would be the first one somebody might want to consider hiring? Just a salesperson and the owner stays the sales manager, for lack of a better description, or somebody that's more the director and can start that effort for the owner? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, and there's no magic, answer on this. Every business is going to be slightly different on what your needs are and everything else. But I think by the vast majority, the first step's going to be getting an additional, getting a salesperson. So that way you can free up your time. And there's a lot of different avenues you can go, as you're hitting your plateau and you're shooting the maximum number of jobs, maybe the first step is another photographer, and things along those lines to kind of relieve some of that. But at a certain point, you're going to need to do some outreach just to stay top of mind with realtors and build those relationships and everything else. So if that's not your area of expertise, or you're not as comfortable with it or anything along those lines, then I think a salesperson is a good next step, because they can be out day in, day out, making those relationships, building those connections, making sure, every real estate agent in your market ideally knows your name, knows what you do, and can start bringing that business in. And so I think that's the most logical next step for most businesses as they grow. And then you can kind of build from there, as you bring in more business, then you make the next step, the next step, the next step, and continue to build that.
Makes sense. So let me ask you then, practically speaking, put yourself in the position of owner of a small but growing company. So you have made the decision to hire, a business development specialist or a salesperson. So you, as the owner, initially are going to act as the sales director. What does your weekly routine look like in leading that business, that salesperson in starting that sales effort? What are you going to do week to week leading that salesperson?
Yeah, the first thing I would do is almost do an inventory of all the tasks that you're doing day in and day out, and just kind of look at all those tasks and figure what would fit under that role. Is it making the phone calls? Is it attending, company breakfast and events and things along those lines? And so you'll build that list out to kind of know these are the things that this person is kind of catered to, and I should try to pull that off my plate and put it onto their plate, so that way they can maximize their time on that side of things. And then your position as the business owner is still everything else. So you've managed to take one thing off your plate, and a lot of those tasks can fit into that one thing, but you're still going to be doing everything else. So you're still acting as the marketer and the accountant and the owner and everything else that's along with it, and quite possibly still one of the main, if not the only, photographer. So there's a lot there, but that would be my first step, is just taking a look at all the tasks that should fit nicely under that new position and build that out, and then just maximize the time. The next step would be looking at things that you've never been able to do because you've been doing a million other things. And so if you had a wish list of, I'd really like to make sure I stop into, every office at least once a month, or if I want to make sure that I, do X, Y, Z, anything that you've just never been able to accomplish on your list is another thing I would dump onto that other plate. So that way they can start maximizing their time as well. Cool. And then your position as the business owner is to direct that person, and hopefully getting the right person into that seat, that they're going to be able to manage their day, as effectively as possible. But you're directing them just to know, one, you want to kind of direct them to what's most important, and make sure that they understand what is the goal of that position. So it's to grow the business. And if you have any direction as to ways to do that or guidance for that, you're still managing that person, and you're still going to have to watch out for the day-to-day, just to make sure, one, the tasks are being completed, and two, it's your responsibility to kind of look at it and say, is this effective? And if it is, then let's keep going and do more. And if it's not, let's take a step back and figure out how we need to restructure, or do I have the right person in that position?
Okay, so great example of like the role of a sales director or marketing director in what they're doing week to week. That awesome example, Steve. So let's look at it from then the salesperson's viewpoint. What does a typical week look like for them? I would share mine. I've shared my experience before, but my role at WOW is kind of unique. I'm a hybrid photographer and salesperson. So during the busy season, I'm busy shooting a lot, and I don't have time for a lot of the typical sales activities. So can you kind of give an example of, like, say, Chris or Pam or Joey, who's on our team in different markets, what their typical week looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So their typical week or day, as you break it down, is essentially, one, they're everything they're doing is to attempt to grow new business and to retain existing business. And
Hmm.
so growing new business, that's pursuing new leads. So that could be anything from contacting, listings on Zillow that don't have real estate media, and those are some
Yeah.
good lead-ins to potential new clients. Could just be cold calling, people that we haven't
Mm.
worked with before,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
making that introduction. And the nice thing is how we structure it, and when people think sales, I do kind of get that feeling where they shudder and they think used car salesman, but
Yeah.
really it's just consultative selling. So it's just
Yeah.
building that relationship. And the first step is letting them know, hey, we're here and this is what we
Mm.
do. So they know it's an option. And then as you continue that relationship, you're trying to bring them in. So that
Yeah.
could be through the Zillow leads. That could be through cold calling. That could be through stopping into offices and just trying to maybe meet a new person or maybe present to an entire team or an entire company, best case scenario. So there's
Hmm.
a lot of ways to start bringing new clients into the business. And the other side of that is retaining the clients that we already have. So number one priority there, and our core values reflect on this, is our clients are a number one priority. And so we
Hmm.
treat them as such. That's not just a talking point. That's how we live our business for us personally.
Right.
And so we want to make sure not only they're using us, but they're getting what they need. They're happy with the services. We're setting expectations as we bring a new client in or even an existing client, just to make sure that they know kind of what to expect when they're working with Wow Video Tours in our situation.
Hmm.
So that's a big part of it, is just retaining that existing business, is just making sure it's not getting a sale and going on to the next person and never talking to that original contact ever again. They're just as important as everybody else because their business is just as important to us, and their relationship is just as important to us. So there's a lot of time that our sales team spends just contacting existing clients for
Yep.
that reason. A good thing that we do is we follow up with appointments just to make sure, kind of get some feedback, how'd the appointment go and once the media is delivered, and kind of touch base on that. And not only that, but all the way through their sales process as a realtor, as they're listing, as they're holding open houses, as they're getting to the closing table, just keeping that contact up and reaching out to them, something as simple as congratulating them on their listing, first of all. And then as it
Hmm.
gets to the end of the cycle and they have it under contract and eventually sold, it's congratulating them again, because that's a
Yeah.
big thing for a realtor.
Easy way to do that: follow them on social media, because
Absolutely.
they all advertise their closings. All of them. They got their picture and their sign. And I just always, whenever that pops up in my feed, because I follow them or have friended them on Facebook, I make sure I just do a like and leave a quick comment. Hey, congrats. You know, man, that was a quick closing. That's awesome. Something
Yeah.
like that. Celebrating their success. Yeah.
Yeah, and celebrate their success, even if it's not with you. To be honest with you,
Yeah.
as you're building those relationships, if they use their cell phone to go out and snap pictures, or they hired a competitor, it doesn't mean that you should shun them and never talk to them
Yeah.
again. I mean, just that's a big moment in their career. Listings
Yeah.
aren't they're hard to come by, and they're even harder to
Yeah.
get to a closing table. So if you can just kind of build them up and let them know that you're here to support them any way possible,
Mhm.
that's how you, one, keep the business, and for new clients, that's how you bring them into the fold of your company.
Right. Right. Okay, so I lied a little bit. I said we'll talk about one of our other BDSs, but so yesterday I had two shoots, and the rest of my day I had four sales type activities. Well, we had one of our other photographers from one of our other markets join me yesterday and shadowed me because he's going to be stepping into a similar role, the same role that I have, of a hybrid BDS. We call them BDSs, business development specialist and photographer. So I've shared on the podcast before, I really like coffee meetings. I like the one-on-one because that's just how I'm wired to build relationships. Large events, I was at a large fundraising event last night. Those are hard for me. Just the hobnobbing and the schmoozing and the small talk is harder for me in large groups where there's lots of loud music and tons of people and tons of talking. But I go home from those drained. I have to recharge. But the one-on-one coffee meeting, I can do all day. I can do that all day. So this other photographer joined me at a coffee meeting I had yesterday with a prospective new client, and it's somebody I'd run into at a couple of presentations that I had done in their office, and went on a office regional trip to one of the islands in Lake Erie last summer, and have talked to her just briefly a couple of times, but I could tell she was a rising star. So I wanted to get to know her a little bit better, and had mentioned once or twice, hey, I'd love to treat to coffee. Well, that date set never happened. So a few weeks ago, saw her again and said, hey, I still owe you a coffee if you're interested. She said, yeah, I would love to. So that when I got home, I gave her a couple of dates, and we finally got something on the calendar. Well, that meeting was yesterday. So James, this our other photographer from another market, he joined me, and this client came into the coffee shop downtown. She's like, "This is a cool place." I said, "Yeah, I really like this place." It just started with small talk, and explained why I wanted to meet with her. I'd like to get to know you and your business better. I noticed when your Facebook post said you were newer, but you don't come off as new to me. And she said, well, thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, I've had people tell me that I shouldn't say I'm new, but compared to other realtors. So it just started with small talk. And I shared the comment. I like these meetings to get to know you and your business and introduce myself and wow video tours a little bit, because we're in this industry to serve realtors and their clients. So I just like to find spaces that we could potentially help. I don't like hard sales. I approach it as, can we be part of your team? Do we have something of value to offer you that can help you grow your business? Because I don't like sales. And she smiled and she said, that's good, because I don't like sales either. Yet here we are, her as a realtor, me as a BDS, but talking about how can we help each other. And so it just started really cool. And I just kind of disarmed her. I said, yeah, I've heard, I've said, you can't sell a salesperson. And she smiled and nodded. Yep, you can't. I said, so you just get it out in the open. You're two human beings, just trying to make a living and do something that you enjoy doing. She loves serving her clients and helping them find homes. I love serving our realtor clients and giving them good media to help them build their business. So you start from a positive, just transparent, here's what we're here to do. And you don't want to get stiff and force conversations. And so the other photographer that was shadowing with me is like, yeah, I like that approach, because he's not salesy either. It's not about sales. It's about consulting and helping and serving.
And Craig, to your point, every person's a little bit different on their comfort levels. So when you're bringing in that person on your sales team, kind of rein in on what's most important to you. Our sales team is pretty split, to where we have about half of our sales team that is more comfortable with that one-on-one aspect, and they can build that trust really easily, and that's where they excel. But they're comfortable going into a room and they can present and they can do everything else that you need to do as well. And we have the other half of the sales team that is just that social butterfly, to where they walk into a room and heads start turning, and they're all excited to talk to them and everything else. And me personally, I'm more of that one-on-one as well. And there's nothing wrong with either way, but it is two different, very, very different approaches.
Right.
And, the unique thing about our sales team is that we have the people that can do whatever they need to do, but their comfort levels, probably lie on one side or the other. And so when you're onboarding that first salesperson or any salesperson, just kind of keep that in mind too, on what's the biggest priority for your company. Are you going to be doing 90% office presentations to groups of 10, 20, 100 people? Then try to focus in on that type of personality, versus if this person's going to be boots on the ground, just sitting, going to coffee with clients and building that relationship and kind of picking off clients one by one, that is going to bring in a lot of business for your company, then kind of focus in on that too. So there's no right or wrong, but there's definitely two different approaches on that side.
For sure. So let me switch gears a little bit. still related to the role of, say, a director of sales and marketing in trying to grow your client acquisition effort. What do you do, Steve, as a leader, to really serve and motivate your sales staff? Because let's face it, let's be real. Sales can be hard, and it can be. You can grow in it to the point where you can brush a lot of no's off. But if you're new in sales and you get a lot of initial no's, that can be pretty disheartening. So you in the leader role, how do you serve, day to day, week to week, in encouraging and motivating and equipping your sales staff for success?
Yeah. So from my perspective, it's kind of unique. So I get to kind of going back to your comment when we started off, just, as a business owner, you're doing everything. And
Right.
There's some things that you despise, and there's some things that you really enjoy. Well, the sales team's no different. There's some things that they really enjoy, and there's some things that they kind of despise as well. And so in my position, I feel like I'm kind of lucky enough that I'm a very analytical and data oriented person. And so I can take a lot of that off their plate to where I'm getting the data put together. I'm putting together processes. I'm looking at analytics to figure out, this is working, this is not, what are some different things we can do? And then I can kind of package that up and present it to the sales team to give them all the tools that they need.
Yep.
So that way they can focus on what they do best and go out there and just build those relationships and bring new clients in.
And those reports are super helpful. I know I like to see, where am I at right now? I like feedback. I like, I like the data too, but spending the time in my day to try and put that data together myself takes away from my time to be going out acquiring new business, exactly like what you just said. So as a salesperson, I definitely appreciate that.
Last year was a good example. It's very easy for a salesperson to get discouraged. Last year was a little bit of a harder year in 2023 to where listings just weren't as abundant, and so we had to kind of pivot on what we were doing and bringing new business in and just honestly keeping existing business, because everybody was kind of tightening up the wallet just to save as much money as possible. So, from a salesperson's perspective, and Craig, you and I have even have conversations like this, it's easy to kind of get discouraged because you're hearing no, 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 no over and over again. But in reality, we can look at the data that's most important to our company. And one thing that we always look at is market share. Out of the listings that are hitting the market, how many are we getting? And so from your perspective, if you're just looking at, the number, last year we did X and this year we're 10% lower than that, that's really kind of draining, because you're thinking like, what am I doing? And from my perspective, I can pull all that data together and I can package it up and look and be like, well, we're actually exceeding what we done last year on market share. And so what we're doing is working. We're just feeling the effects of the market. Yeah. And so I really enjoy being able to see that, put that information together, and then kind of relay that onto you and anybody else on the sales team, because I think it just helps you as a salesperson stay motivated, because what I'm doing is not hurting the company. It's helping the company. I'm doing a good job in what I'm doing. I just need to look at it from a different perspective to know that that's the case.
Yeah. Those of us that, especially I think that are introverts, we have a tendency to beat ourselves up mentally pretty easy. And if I didn't have that perspective that you set with the market share, I'd be thinking, I am just a complete and utter failure. I've fallen off the wagon.
It's easy to think that way when you're looking, because I mean, it is, that's your main number that you're typically looking at is, number of sales or whatever the metric is. So if that's less than previous points, then your mind instantly goes to, as a salesperson, it's like, oh, I'm not doing a good job. But if you take a deeper dive into that, and that's what I enjoy. I get to, because I'm not, with the sales team handling the day to day and doing the tough part as far as going out and having the conversations and everything. I get to have a little bit more time to dissect all that data know exactly what's happening, and then we can see. And there are some times where something's not working and we pivot, and there's times where it's like, no, we're doing better than we expected, so keep going.
Yeah, I'll say I've been in sales roles before, and not that every role has been like this, but I know in a lot of sales departments, it can just be cold, hard. Hey, you're not hitting your numbers,
Yeah.
and you're gone. And there
Yeah.
isn't the deeper dive in the empathy and really the leadership perspective of I want to help you win.
I've been in that boat myself in my years of sales.
Yeah.
I've worked for some Fortune 500 companies that looked at nothing except for one baseless metric that really doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. For example, I actually worked in financial before, and their metric that they were looking at is the number of applications that were coming in through the branches. And my metric was the number of actual accounts and closed loan opportunities that we were taking. And so, like me personally, I felt like that was so cold and demotivating because at the end of the day, just thinking of it in terms of our business, would I look at the metrics and see Craig had 10 conversations, but he didn't get a single sale, and that's exactly what we want? Or would I look at it and say, Craig had one conversation and had one sale, and that's the bigger win out of the two metrics? So it is important to look at that. And, I do enjoy that we are looking at that as a company. We're not focused in on one metric or one data point that doesn't really mean anything at the end of the day for our bottom line. We're looking at a full picture and continuing to adjust as the years change, just to make sure that we're looking at the right numbers.
Right. And keeping our humanity in the process where it's not just cold, hard business. And that's one thing I've been very public about saying that I appreciate about WOW is the leadership philosophy is our leadership cares about us. Is the day-to-day out in the trenches, and it's not just cold hard business, because like Todd and I have preached over and over and over about developing relationships with our clients. It's got to be the same thing for a business owner or a sales director or sales marketing director, that you develop relationship with the people that you're leading. I'm doing this men's cohort at church, and one of the books that we read as part of this cohort was, oh, geez, I just blanked out on his name. Who's the leadership guru?
Maxwell?
Yes, John Maxwell. Thank you. Jeez, oh, Pete, did that live on the podcast. Anyway, read a John Maxwell book called The 5 Levels of Leadership. And he dives into those various levels where your first level is, it's just leadership by position. You're just taking the position and trying to motivate people, and there's no relationship at all. And that does not motivate anybody. It doesn't encourage anybody on your team to do better. And so growing through those levels of leadership in trying to grow your client acquisition, you've got to go deeper as a leader in building a good, solid team. And Steve, you did something. I'm going to brag on you a little bit again. So this is something that just touched me. It was actually it was a small thing, but it impacted me really deep. Quite a few months back, you asked me a random question. you know what I'm going to say. You asked me just kind of out of the blue, hey, what's your favorite Bible verse? Because faith is important to me. And I'm like, oh, well, it's Ephesians 4:29. And I listed it out. And you're like, oh, okay, thanks. And I'm like, what's he up to? What was that for? Because that was just kind of an out of the blue question. But I kept going, with day-to-day work and kind of forgot about it. So for those of you listening and watching, let's see, was it end of March is my WOW anniversary? Now I forget when it was. Anyway, my 2-year anniversary of working for WOW Video Tours came up. And Steve and our leadership sent me a very, very thoughtful gift that showed up in mail. He said, hey, keep your eyes open. Yeah, we got something coming for you. I'm like, oh, well, all right, thanks. So I get this 2-year anniversary gift, and it's a coffee mug. Okay, now those of you listening, watching, you're thinking, okay, great, a coffee mug. Yeah, I got 20 coffee mugs. Right. It's not the point of the coffee mug. It was what was on the coffee mug. And it was my favorite verse, Ephesians 4:29, that just touched me deeply. So you as a sales leader, sales director, owner of a business, those little things that you ask your people that are important to them, that you remember and come back to them and gift them something, or just something small, makes a huge impact.
Know what motivates your team, and what's important to them. For the sales side, most of the time it's financial, because that's what they're in sales for. But I mean, also, so you want to make sure that you're taking care of them on that side, of course, and making sure that they're in a position where they're happy with what they have from the company. But yeah, it's little things, can make a big difference. And I've learned that through my career, is everybody's different on what's important to them. I've had teammates that they would turn down $100 bill if they would prefer to be off 15 minutes early at the end of Friday. And others that they would actually prefer something personal, or in other cases maybe just even something as simple as a candy bar or something like that. It's just if you ask those questions, know your team, know what kind of drives them, know what's important to them personally, and that helps. And even outside of sales, that's just good with any team member that you bring into your company. But it's just it's a way to make sure just like what we were talking about with our clients, we humanize it. It's just a relationship. That should be the same internally with anybody you bring on as well.
It is. I was just thinking about another book as you were talking about finding different ways to motivate different people, because we are all motivated by different things. This is a pretty well-known book, I think, but speaks exactly to that issue of different motivators for different people. It's called The 5 Love Languages. Have you heard of that one before, Steve?
Yes, I have.
Have you read it?
I have.
Oh, awesome. Good deal. So check out this book called The 5 Love Languages. And I know it sounds weird because it's in the context of a love relationship, marriage, basically, but the principles still apply in everyday human relationships. Some people are motivated by physical touch, acts of service, gifts, words of encouragement, and I'm blanking on the last one. Do you remember the last one?
Oh, put me on the spot. I'm trying to think of what it is.
Yeah. Well, if you know it, if you're watching this, leave a comment in the comments section. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it. I'm not even gonna try and figure it out. You tell us, those of you watching, what is the 5th love language? I know I could Google it and find it real quick, but let's get some interaction going. Anyway, those are our primary motivators for people. So learn your team, learn what motivates them in the context of trying to grow your business. You don't do it to manipulate people. You want to truly care about them as human beings because they can see through manipulation. So you got to be real about it and be authentic. But those are great tools as you're trying to grow your business and acquire more clients, motivating your sales staff or yourself, to get out there and get it.
To piggyback on what you just said, that's probably going to push you out of your comfort zone, to be honest with you. And that is for me too. Like, I'm not words of encouragement are difficult for me. It's just one of those things that not like I internalize those, but to verbalize them, I just historically I've never done a great job at that. So I'm always trying to get better at doing that. So you're going to get pushed out of your comfort zone with some of those categories too. So that's not a bad thing. The more you get pushed out of your comfort zone, the more you grow. So just keep that in mind. It's going to be difficult in some cases, but that's a good thing.
Yeah. And there's two aspects of the love languages: the love language you receive, what motivates you, and the one that you're naturally wired to express. So like you, expressing words of encouragement might not come natively, but maybe gift giving is. You gave me the gift of that coffee mug with a verse that meant a lot to me. So yeah, you might have a native gift giving language that you speak, but you got to get multilingual. And yeah, that can be hard. It takes work. It takes practice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, good stuff. Our guest, Steve Musser, Director of Sales and Marketing for Wow Video Tours. Steve, always enjoy talking with you, and thanks for making the time to join us this week.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I always enjoy jumping on and taking a deep dive into some of our day-to-days.
Yeah, good stuff. All right. Well, I think we've talked plenty, and if you found this to be helpful to your business as you think about growing and maybe starting a sales team, we'd love for you to like this episode. Feel free to share it with others, and if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you can stay up on all the new episodes that come out here on the Spiro podcast. We just appreciate you, the comments that you leave. Always awesome to interact with you guys and get to know you better and celebrate your successes. So feel free to leave a comment, share something good that happened with you this week. We'd love to hear those good stories. And just remember, take some time this week to be thankful for the blessings in your life. Make sure you take a breath and just have an awesome week. Take care.
Thank you for joining us for the Spiro Podcast, Managing Your Real Estate Photography and Videography Business. This is a production of Spiro and Wow Video Tours. You can find out more about Spiro's real estate media business management software at our website, spiro.media.